Voices under the floorboards. The blackout started just as the wind picked up, rattling the pipes in the old building. I worked maintenance, but even I felt unsettled. The hum of electricity vanished, leaving only darkness and the faint creak of the floors beneath my feet. I grabbed a flashlight from the supply closet and stepped into the hallway. The beam cut through the pitch-black corridor, landing on a loose floorboard near apartment 3C. It had been squeaky before, but now it seemed to thrum under invisible weight. I bent down and pressed my hand against it. The wood vibrated slightly, a soft humming that turned into faint whispers. I leaned closer, straining to hear the words, but the sounds didn't make sense like language, and memory twisting into something unfamiliar. Closer, straining to hear the words, but the sounds didn't make sense like language, and memory twisting into something unfamiliar. I moved along the hallway, flashlight swinging. Each floorboard beneath my steps responded differently. Some creaked normally, others hummed in protest, and a few seemed to shiver under my weight. It was as if the building itself was alive, listening to every move I made. The whispers followed me. I turned into apartment 3C to investigate, but the room was empty. The floorboards were intact, no gaps, no scratches. Yet the air felt heavy, pressing against my chest as if the walls themselves were breathing. I knelt and slid my hand under the edge of a board near the corner. There it was, a tiny gap, just enough to see darkness beneath. The voices emerged stronger here, closer. I heard a single word repeated over and over: leave. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Maintenance pranks? My coworkers? But the building was nearly empty tonight, the tenants long gone. I pulled the board back fully, peering into the black void below. Something shifted. Something moved. A chill ran through my spine. Footsteps beneath the floor. Not mine, not anyone's I knew. Soft, deliberate, pacing slowly, matching the rhythm of the whispers. I backed away, flashlight trembling in my hand, but the sound seemed to follow, circling beneath me like a predator in hiding. I tried calling my supervisor, but no signal. The landline was dead. Every electronic device I had flickered and died, as though the building absorbed the energy, leaving me stranded in a pocket of darkness and sound. I braced myself and slid the board back in place, hoping to block whatever it was. The whispers grew faint, but a low, vibrating hum remained. I could hear breathing beneath the floorboards, heavy and wet, brushing against the wood like wet cloth. I stayed in the hallway, flashlight pointed at the board, listening. A shape shifted below, too tall, too wide, stretching along the beams in impossible ways. I imagined faces, twisted and hollow, peering up from the dark, mouths forming words I couldn't understand. The next day, I told myself it was fatigue. The storm had knocked out power, and my imagination had run wild. I examined the floorboards in the light, everything normal. No gaps, no signs of intrusion, nothing. Just wood and nails, as they had always been. That night, the blackout returned. I had been warned by neighbors that the old wiring was unstable. But this time, when I entered the hallway, I felt the vibration before I saw the darkness. The floor hummed and pulsed under my boots, as if something alive lurked beneath. I knelt and pressed my hand again. The voices were clearer now, distinct, male and female, young and old, all speaking in broken phrases, telling stories of people who had walked above them unaware. Some whispered warnings, others demanded attention, all weaving together in a symphony of dread. I tried to lift the board again, but my hands froze. Something pushed from below, strong enough to make the wood quiver under my palms. A sensation of pressure, like arms wrapping around my wrists from beneath, but unseen. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall, heart hammering. I ran down the hall, flashlight swinging wildly. Every floorboard along the way responded. Screeches, Thumps, whispers, breathing. The building had become a creature, alive and aware, shaped by the weight of memories, losses and secrets long buried. I reached the stairwell, the stairs themselves grown differently than they should, each step a note in the chorus of voices. I descended quickly, trying to put distance between myself and whatever was alive under the floors, but the sound followed me, relentless and intimate. I paused in the lobby, catching my breath, flashlight shaking. A faint scratching noise came from beneath the reception desk. I knelt, shining the light under it, and saw a small gap in the floorboards. The voices swelled, louder, more urgent. "Do not leave. Stay." I froze. The sound wasn't coming from one place, but all places at once. Every floorboard, every beam, every nail vibrated with life. The building itself wanted something. And I, a maintenance worker, had unknowingly become part of its hunger. If you're listening to this now, pay attention to the sounds beneath your own floors tonight. Keep the lights on. Don't knock or tap. Sometimes curiosity draws more than answers. And if you want more stories like this, open the horror box and subscribe, because some voices are still waiting. I spent the night in the lobby, unable to move, flashlight trained on the gap beneath the desk. The vibrations never ceased. Footsteps circled above and below, laughter faint but chilling. The voices told their stories again and again, a never-ending echo under the floorboards. By morning, power returned. Everything appeared normal, but the hum lingered. I could feel it in my chest, in my arms, wherever I walked. I couldn't ignore it. The building had marked me, and I was now part of its chorus, listening, waiting, pacing in rhythm with the floorboards. The next blackout came quickly. I wasn't surprised. I moved cautiously, flashlight tight in my grip, every step measured. The floorboards responded instantly, vibrating in warning, in anticipation. The voices were there, calling, whispering, demanding recognition. I could almost see shapes pressing against the wood from below, reaching for me, unseen yet unmistakably present. I tried leaving the building that night. Every door felt heavier, the stairs longer, the hallways stretching impossibly. I reached the exit, only to find it blocked by shadows, black shapes that weren't tangible, but solid enough to make me stumble backward in fear. I retreated to the lobby, eyes wide, mind racing. The voices whispered together in perfect rhythm now. Overlapping languages, overlapping stories, all urgent, all demanding I stay. The building itself seemed to breathe, alive with history and memory, refusing to release me from its grip. By dawn, everything quieted, but not completely. The floorboards under my feet vibrated faintly, a reminder that the building never truly sleeps, and I never do either. Each night, I hear the voices again, tracing their paths beneath the floors, measuring my steps, waiting for the moment I look too long, listen too closely, or try to leave. The building remembers. It knows. And so do I. The house that locked itself. It began subtly, almost like the house was testing me. The front door would bolt on its own, not to lock me out, but as if marking the perimeter of the space I was allowed to inhabit. I dismissed it at first, thinking the old latch had warped in the heat, that a breeze or a subtle shift in the floor had caused the mechanism to engage. But then it happened more often, at odd hours, precise and deliberate, each click echoing through the quiet house. Nights became tense. I would wake, lying still in the dark, straining to hear a faint sound of movement beyond my bedroom door. The bolt would slide slowly into place, and I knew I had not moved toward it. Sometimes I would open the door and peer into the hallway. Nothing, only the faint smell of dust and old wood, the shadows stretching unnaturally, like they were waiting for something to happen. The pattern continued. I started keeping notes, small observations, times the bolt moved, how long it took, which way the door shifted. The more I watched, the more the house seemed to anticipate my presence, responding subtly, calculating, watching. One evening, I tried leaving the house, stepping onto the porch, keys in hand. The bolt slid into place behind me. I shook it, forced it open, and the house remained perfectly silent. The door clicked shut, though I had never touched it. Sleep became fragmented. Every creak of the floor sounded amplified. The wind outside howled, and I swore the house shifted minutely when I walked, like it was aware of my weight, my intentions, and my fear. I began noticing details that felt wrong. Furniture slightly out of place, objects resting where they should not have been, the faintest impressions on carpet or floorboards, as if something unseen had passed through. I considered calling a locksmith, someone to inspect the mechanism, but every professional I invited dismissed it. Old houses do strange things, they said, yet I knew this was different. The locks moved with precision and intent beyond natural explanation. One night, I stayed in the living room, flashlight in hand, determined to catch the door in action. Hours passed. The house remained silent. Then, a whisper of movement from the doorway, the faintest metallic click, and the bolt slid into place without a sound of friction or strain. My breath caught. I stepped closer, hand trembling, and as I reached for the handle, a cold draft brushed my arm. The hallway beyond seemed darker than the room I stood in, more alive, as if the shadows themselves had weight. I tried recording it on my phone. Hours of footage showed nothing unusual, no movement of the door. Yet each night I slept uneasily, certain that the house had moved while the cameras failed to capture it, as if it existed partially outside what technology could perceive. The door began locking at odd times, even during the day, even when I was watching directly. The air felt heavier. Steps echoed behind me when I walked, though no one followed. I felt eyes on my back, though I was alone. One morning, I discovered scratches along the doorframe, shallow but deliberate, forming lines and patterns that suggested counting, measurement, awareness. I stared, unable to understand the language of these markings, but aware that something beyond comprehension was present. I stopped leaving doors unlocked. Windows remained shut. The house seemed to sigh when I moved, creaking and settling as if responding to my hesitation. Each shadow cast by a lamp or sunbeam felt alive, shifting ever so slightly when I wasn't looking directly. The neighbors began noticing changes too. Subtle shifts in light from my windows, silhouettes that moved when blinds were drawn. They asked if I had visitors, if someone had been inside. I could only shake my head. I was alone, yet never entirely alone. I started sleeping in different rooms each night, but the door followed. No matter where I went, the sound of the bolt sliding echoed in the stillness of the house. A slow, deliberate reminder of boundaries enforced by unseen hands. The patterns grew complex. Sometimes it would lock twice in a row, or pause for minutes, testing. Sometimes it would slide back open slightly, just enough to make me question my perception. I began to doubt my own senses. I attempted to leave again, packing my car, preparing a long trip. As I turned the key in the ignition, I felt it a resistance, an invisible hand pressing against my chest. When I glanced toward the house, the front door stood ajar for only a moment. Then the bolt slid home as I watched, impossibly, without touching it. Days blurred into weeks. I became obsessed with tracking the door, mapping its behavior, noting times and patterns. The house seemed to feed off my attention, growing heavier, more aware, as if conscious of every glance and step. I stopped inviting friends over. No one should see this. No one should know. Yet the house revealed itself in small ways. Lights flickered in corridors. I didn't enter. The temperature shifted subtly when I stood in particular spots, and shadows always seemed to watch. I began speaking aloud, as if negotiation could help. I apologized for being there. I asked it not to harm me. The bolt still clicked, still slid, yet sometimes I imagined a pause, a hesitation, a responsive comprehension. One night, I stayed awake until dawn. I watched the door, waited. The bolt moved twice. The floorboards creaked lightly behind me. I felt a presence, silent but patient, as if the house were observing my fear, my vigilance, my desperation. I realized I could never fully control it, never escape it. The house defined the rules. It determined the boundaries, the rhythm, the cadence of my life within its walls. Subtle fear grew into resignation. I left doors locked. Lights remained on. I spoke softly when moving. The house accepted my compliance, but never relaxed. The bolt still moved on its own, a constant reminder that I was only a guest, never the master. I don't know if it is aware of time, of the world outside. Perhaps it exists only for me, only in these moments of tension and observation, a living entity in the guise of wood and nails. Each night I hear it, the metallic slide, the quiet settling of floors, the whisper of air through closed windows. I cannot predict it. I cannot reason with it. I can only observe and endure, knowing that the house is alive, and I am simply passing through its consciousness. Even now, as I write this, I hear the faintest click from the hallway. I stop. I wait. The bolt has moved again. It is watching. It knows. And I am reminded that no house is truly empty. No door simply a door, and some boundaries are enforced by intelligence that is impossible to see or challenge. The van that never leaves the street. It began with a van parked at the very end of the cul-de-sac, dark blue with windows blacked out, motionless yet somehow commanding the street. At first, I thought it belonged to someone visiting overnight, but the license plate never changed, and no one was ever seen entering or exiting. Every night, around midnight, the street grew silent. The van sat in the same spot, heavy and oppressive, as if counting every light left on in the houses nearby. Neighbors mentioned it casually at first, joking that it had been there for weeks. I laughed nervously, but could not shake the sense of being observed. I tried calling the police. By the time anyone arrived, the van would vanish, only to reappear minutes later in the exact same position, untouched by human hands. Its headlights never turned on, no engine roared. Only the blacked-out windows reflected the dim streetlights, and a weight seemed to press through the shadows, unseen but undeniable. I began walking my dog at night, circling the street, trying to see someone inside, anyone. The van never moved, never opened a door, never made a sound. Sometimes I thought I saw figures behind the windows, shadows that shifted unnaturally, fleeting forms that seemed aware, observing me from within the glass. One night, I parked across the street, flashlight in hand. My hands trembled as I tried to read the license plate, but the van seemed impossibly closer than it had been before. A faint tapping sounded on the blacked-out windows, deliberate and slow, echoing in the quiet street. I froze, certain that no living being could make that sound alone. I called my wife. Her phone was dead, though I had charged it. The van's presence seemed heavier, darker, closer, yet it did not move an inch. I bolted inside, shutting every door. Each window reflected the same dark blue van, as if it had expanded to fill the street entirely, surrounding me with shadows. Over the next few nights, the van multiplied in my imagination. Sometimes I imagined 2 or 3 parked along the street, black, silent, all watching, all patient. One night, I stepped into the street with a flashlight, shaking, determined to confront it. The van remained motionless, but the air itself felt alive, as if something pressed against me invisibly. I realized the tires had left no tracks in the wet asphalt. It had not moved for weeks, yet I felt it inch closer each night, encroaching into my personal space without crossing the boundary. I installed cameras, hoping to catch evidence. Every recording showed nothing. Night vision blurred the shape. Motion sensors registered nothing, yet the sense of being watched never diminished. I walked the street again, flashlight cutting shadows. Its reflection appeared in every window, always slightly off, never aligning with reality, yet unmistakably present, patient, eternal. Neighbors began leaving. Whispers circulated about strange feelings, sudden chills, objects moving subtly in their homes. The van remained, unaffected, observing from the end of the street. I tried leaving myself, driving away, planning long trips. Upon returning, the van was always there, same dark blue, same blacked out windows, as if I had never left at all. I shone my flashlight into the window once. A shadow shifted, pressed against the glass, fluid and inhuman, then vanished before I could blink. Fear became a constant, an undercurrent in every glance outside. Every corner, every shadow, every movement in the street reminded me it was there, watching. Time slowed when it was present, stretching minutes into unbearable hours of tense anticipation. I whispered to it from the porch, asking who it was and what it wanted. Silence answered, but I imagined the faintest tilt of a shadowy head, acknowledgement without words. I rearranged furniture, changed routines, avoided windows. It adapted, its presence woven into the very fabric of the street, inseparable from the night, constant, patient. I stopped sleeping near the front of the house. Curtains remained drawn, but every morning I peeked outside to see it waiting, eternal, unblinking, a sentinel I could never confront. The van never moved during the day, yet at night it seemed to pulse, feeding on attention, on awareness, on fear, growing heavier with every passing hour. I do not know what it wants. I do not know why it remains. I only know that every glance outside, every sound in the street, every shadow reminds me it exists, patient and eternal. Even now, as I write, the van lingers at the end of the cul-de-sac, its windows black, its presence undeniable. If you ever see a vehicle that seems to watch, keep your lights on, and if curiosity tempts you, open the horror box and subscribe. Some watchers never leave, some shadows are patient, and some darkness extends beyond comprehension, waiting silently at the edge of your vision, counting, observing, always present.